Hello, welcome to the OSU Alumni Association's Travel Talk presentation, Croatia and the Dalmatian Coast. I'm Kate Standers, Director for Alumni Programs and Alumni Group Travel. The OSU Alumni Association's online Travel Talk series is our way of connecting the people of OSU and the places we go on our group travel program. I love seeing that some of you that have joined us tonight are past travelers and also a few new names as well. Welcome, everyone. For folks that aren't new, we welcome everyone on our tours, alumni, family, and friends. The best place to find the trips is online at fororegonstate.org/travel. There's a mix of land tours, cruises, train trips, riverboats, all sorts of options. There's exclusive departures with only OSU alumni and friends, and also trips with a mix of others from different universities. When a tour sells well, a professor or a university leader or an alumni association representative joins the tour, providing additional educational content about the destination and the university. Not only are you learning more by having an OSU ambassador, but they also assist with tour logistics and help ensure you have a great time. So save the date. We have a few travel talks coming up. They're all at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. March 21st, we have Elizabeth Tomasino, Associate Professor of Enology, and she will join us on a talk on Italian wine and coffee. She did a presentation for us last summer, and it was great. So definitely looking forward to that one. On May 10, there's a conversation on D-Day for the 80th anniversary with Paul Wanke, a senior instructor in the School of History, Philosophy, and Religion. And on June 6th, we're going to head to Africa, well, specifically Botswana with Sunil Khanna. Sunil leads trips to Botswana with students to do some volunteer projects. And he's going to talk a little bit about that, as well as we're going to preview a special 2024 trip to Botswana. It'll be a lot of fun. If you'd like to register for any of these or view any of our earlier Travel Talk presentations, you can find them all at fororegonstate.org/travel talks. The recordings are linked at the bottom of the page. And this program is too being recorded, and we will post it online in the next few days, and you will also receive an email with a direct link to the recording. At the end of tonight's presentation, stay tuned for some very brief information on some upcoming tours to Croatia. Now, about tonight's presentation. We are here to talk about Croatia and the Dalmatian Coast with Selina Heppell, Department Head of Fisheries, Wildlife, and Conservation Sciences, her husband, fisheries professor Scott Heppell, and their son Dylan, a 2022 environmental sciences graduate from the Honors College and the College of Earth, Oceans, and Atmospheric Sciences. Selina and Scott have taught conservation biology on the Croatian coast from 2005 to 2012, and have traveled much of northern Croatia with Dylan. Today, they're going to talk about their research and their travels to the area. Hello, I see you all now. How are you today?
We're doing great. Thanks for having us here today. Sorry, we're just trying to get our lighting set up.
Yeah, no, you're good. Well, the floor is yours, so take it away.
All right, thanks so much. And thanks everybody for coming. We scrolled through the list of participants and noticed a few friendly names. So that's fun to have some folks like that. As Kate said, we're going to talk a bit about Croatia and our travels there. We'll talk about some of the places we've been and some of the places that you'll be going. But we thought it would also be good maybe to just start with a little introduction to ourselves. And so let me bring that slide up and learn a little bit about each of us and why we started traveling to Croatia to begin with. We start our slideshow. There we go. Dobar dan, good day. This will be touring Croatia with the Heppells. Selina?
All right, so I'm Selina Heppell. I'm the head of Fisheries, Wildlife, and Conservation Sciences. I'm a department head, a mom, a professor, and I'm an advisor to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration on Endangered and Threatened Species, marine fisheries ecologist and conservation biologist, and an OSU professor since 2001.
Great. And my name is Scott Heppell. I'm a scientist, a professor. I work at OSU in the same department of fisheries, wildlife, and conservation sciences. Been there almost exactly the same amount of time, not surprisingly. My job takes me over a lot of different places, and that's one of the great things that we like about our travels and work generally. I, as Selina does, work as a scientist, but also have the opportunity to work at the interface between science and policy, have worked with the Pacific Fishery Management Council and other organizations. And the other thing I want to highlight is the picture in the lower center that's myself with Brian Endress. We co-teach a field course in Palau each summer, which is one of the other international opportunities that we get to go on. Dylan?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dylan Heppell. I'm the third member of the Heppell family. I was fortunate enough growing up that I got to go on a number of the adventures that my parents went on, including most of the travels to Croatia. It just so happened that the majority of those trips overlapped with my birthday. So you can see in the top right image, that's me in the cockpit of a plane on my 12th birthday on our way to Croatia. I traveled with them enough times to Croatia to make a very good friend there. His name was Matija. You can see him in the top left image there. And while my parents were teaching during the day, I would spend that time with him exploring the city and doing fun activities. More recently, I graduated from OSU in June of 2022 with an honors Bachelor's of Science degree in environmental sciences. And today I am working as the Conservation Science Fellow for the Reef Environmental Education Foundation here in Key Largo, Florida.
Great, thanks, Dylan. We did want to start off just really briefly talking about our department and program, just to let you know more about it. And actually, it's great that there's a couple of folks from our program online today. So we're the Department of Fisheries, Wildlife, and Conservation Sciences, formerly the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. Been around for 85, 86, 87 years, a while anyway. And we do work at the intersection of conservation and management in a variety of different systems, terrestrial, avian ecology, birds and things like that, in marine systems. And not only do they do this type of work locally, we're really all over the world. If you go to our website, you'll see this map with a series of pins that describes a bunch of the different places that our faculty work doing research both domestically and abroad. But for tonight,
we're going to talk about Croatia. So Croatia is on the Adriatic Sea, right across from Italy. And in fact, we often on our trips to Croatia took a ferry from Venice. So we would fly into Venice and then take the ferry over to the Istrian Peninsula, which is right up here in the very northern coast of Croatia. But we're going to go through several of the sites and places that are going to be the subject of the tour that some of you are going on, and give you some information about what we've learned working in Croatia since 2004. So our work there was with, we developed with our Croatian colleagues, the International School of Conservation Biology. And we started that in 2005. We generally ran the course out of Rovinj, which is in that northern Istrian Peninsula there. Rovinj is a lovely town and has a marine science center. And we had several colleagues from University of Zagreb and other institutions in Croatia. They helped us set up the Institute for Conservation Biology. Now, I'll just give you a quick timeline of conservation biology in Croatia. So in 2004, I gave a presentation, plenary address to the Croatian Biological Congress called Conservation Biology, Crisis Discipline. And then in 2005, we had the first School of Conservation Biology. Now, at that time, we started with 24 students, mostly Croatians, and had some Croatian biologists work with us to contribute to case study lectures and other things, and then help with the logistics and so on. That course was actually not accepted by the University of Zagreb because at that time, conservation biology was not considered a discipline. It was considered, what they call it, advocacy of one sort or another, and didn't consider it a scientific discipline. But after 2006, when we offered the course a second time, I had several meetings with administrators at the University of Zagreb. And then over the period from 2007 to 2012, we became a regular event with 150 students from 20 different countries and 8 faculty from Croatia and Slovenia. And then over the period 2013 to 17, because of financial disruption and other things in Croatia, we had to go on hiatus for a bit. But during that time, as Croatia was entering the European Union, a program in conservation biology was started at the University of Zagreb. So impact.
Yes.
Okay. Then in 2018, we did the International School of Marine Conservation Science in Koper, Slovenia, with a field excursion to Croatia. And so that was with our Croatian and Slovenian colleagues. So a lot of the work that we've done has included scientific work as well. And a lot of that has been with a nonprofit organization called Blue World Institute. Blue World Institute works out of Lošinj, and we'll show you where that is on a map. And they do a lot of work with dolphins. While you're in Croatia, if you were around these islands, you will likely see dolphins. These are bottlenose dolphins, and they are well studied and well loved by the Croatians on these different islands. So here's a map showing just some of the general areas that are part of the tour and some of the areas that we're going to talk about tonight. And we're going to start down here in Dubrovnik. So you see Dubrovnik is at the very southern end of Croatia. And there's actually, what's interesting is there's a little tiny bit of Bosnia and Herzegovina that actually ensures that country has a little bit of coastline and a port.
Like 10 kilometers of coastline.
Yeah, it's a tiny little sliver there. If you were on a bus, which we were at the time, you actually have to go through customs to go twice to go out of Croatia through Bosnia and then back into Croatia. So, but you will be on a boat and you won't have to do that. But that is a funny little thing there, right there where Bosnia and Herzegovina actually meet the coastline there. All right, so we're going to talk about just generally the beauties of Croatia and the fact that it is mostly islands and mostly marine system there of the Adriatic. It is an absolutely gorgeous coastline and surprisingly few boats in a lot of areas. Like this is one of the panoramics from the trip that we went on in the northern coast.
Yeah, to give you an idea, just location, this is towards the northern coast. That island that we're looking out at there is the island of Cres, and just behind it is the island of Rab, which is one of the stops for the tour.
And Croatia just has a lot of beautiful little towns, very historic areas, especially on some of these smaller islands. The churches are gorgeous. They have beautiful artwork and are scattered about in different towns. Depending on where you stop for your tour, you'll have an opportunity to go into a lot of these small places. And the Croatians themselves are wonderfully hospitable, wonderful people. They always want to have a drink and something to eat, and lots of outdoor dining and things like that.
One of my favorite parts.
Yes, it's great. And then the canobas are the small taverns that are a great place to grab something to eat and get to know somebody, and they will love to hear that you're from the United States and want to have a chat with you for sure.
And I've just got the other thing to illustrate with this is that there's just so many small back alleys and places to explore, towns that were built before automobiles. So they're particularly in the central core of these towns, there oftentimes won't be cars or very few, and so they're really a walkable, explorable space.
And the coastline is amazing, and the Adriatic is very clear water, very oligotrophic. And there's lots of places to swim. The water isn't always terribly warm, I would say, but it's not bad. And it is just great for snorkeling, for swimming, and so on. But do beware, they do not have sandy beaches. They have cobblestone beaches. And so you'll want to have some footwear of some sort to get around on the beaches there.
And the other thing, and again, you'll see this if you looked at the map, there is some interior parts of the country of Croatia, but really, and the part that attracts us the most, of course, is the coastline. There's over 1,700 kilometers of coastline, so not quite rivaling what we have on the US West Coast. You'll see all sorts of small fishing villages. There's plenty of places to fish shops to buy, and then there's also a fair bit of aquaculture that goes on there as well. One of the sort of premier showcase fishes that you would be able to buy in a restaurant is something called branzine, and that's largely one of their primary aquaculture products as well. But just quaint little fishing villages, integrating both the active fishing ports as well as the tourism along the waterfronts.
All right, so we're going to start down here in Dubrovnik, and then we'll work our way north. And Scott is going to talk a little bit about Dubrovnik.
Of course. So Dubrovnik is probably Croatia's most famous town, made more famous recently because of TV shows. But we had our first opportunity to visit Dubrovnik in 2003, which in some ways might not seem that long ago. It's an amazingly beautiful town. It has this historic wall that basically goes around the perimeter of the entire old town. If you read up about it, you'll learn that in some places it's 30 meters tall. Sometimes it's as thick as 12 meters at the base, and it encloses the old town, which again is one of these amazing, just walkable places. So many nooks and crannies and small restaurants, the konobas, the tavernas, things like that to find a bite to eat. It's got a beautiful waterfront, very picturesque with all the little boats bobbing around. But when we were there in 2003, I think it's also important to point out that that was really just 6 or 7, maybe 8 years after the end of the breakup of Yugoslavia. And so there was actually still a massive amount of rebuilding that was going on there, which hopefully when you get there, if you're going on this tour, you'll get to see a lot more. But the town was under siege and shelled heavily during the conflict, and still held and ultimately recovered to what it is probably today. But that is in fact the history of this town overall, right? Since its original construction back in the 1100s or 1200s to build the wall, to keep out the Venetians, to keep out the Ottomans, and more recently with the battles with the Bosnians and the Serbs and so on and so forth, it continued to actually, even in modern tourist day, serve that purpose. And just a few street scenes. It is, again, an amazingly wonderful place to walk around, all sorts of amazing architecture, really great views and vistas. You can actually walk, I think, the entire perimeter of that wall, so you can see the city from all its angles. And if you get an opportunity to do that, definitely recommend an early morning or late evening walk, because the light will be spectacular on all of the, most of it is built out of rock. And so the lighting on this is just a fantastic thing to see.
So for you Game of Thrones fans, just to the north of the main walls of Dubrovnik, which were featured in the show, there is the Red Keep. There's a fortress just to the north there. And those walls there, which should look familiar to you, are 37 meters high and 12 meters thick. And this particular keep was built to keep the Venetians out. So there was a lot of back and forth with the Venetians and so on over time. But that hopefully looks familiar to you, part of King's Landing and so on. And then just to the north of Dubrovnik is Lokrum Island, which is a beautiful, beautiful little island.
Great little hikes.
And really short hikes and other things that you can do there if you get a chance to get off the boat and check out Lokrum Island, which has some old ruins on it, and you can see beautiful clear waters and so on around it. All right, now we're going to move north up to Split and the Split area. So again, Game of Thrones fans, the Cliffs Fortress is where the city of Marine was filmed for the show. So Split, this particular fortress is about 200 years old. It was built to keep the Ottomans out. So all of these fortresses were built to keep somebody out. And there's a lot of back and forth that happens over the many centuries that Croatia has had civilization there. And then you'll also have a chance to see Diocletian's palace in Split. And this is where the dragon training grounds were that Daenerys used when she was training the dragons in the show. This was the Emperor Diocletian's retirement home, one of several, no doubt. And it is in Split, along with several other amazing things to see there in Split. All right, and then moving northwards up and around to where you're going to come into Rob. I don't think you're spending time in Zadar, but you might be. And so Scott has been to Rob.
Yeah, and Rob is sort of quintessential to the northern islands, right? There's a lot of very rocky, it's almost all sort of limestone karst topography, very rocky, these beautiful clear waters that you can get into. I find them swimmable, but of course, I'm okay with slightly colder water. And then just these villages that are built oftentimes out onto peninsulas and promontories on the islands, and then work their way up the hills. And these are one of these places, and Dylan will talk about this towards the end, I think, when we talk about some of the food and whatnot that's available there, is that, you know, the fresh fish, the amazing produce, the things like that you can get there. And almost all of these, the other thing you'll notice if you move around the islands is almost all of them have walls that have been built over centuries, like low-lying walls that effectively serve as hedgerows to keep people's sheep in one farm area versus another. And so these places have been inhabited for centuries, and they get used now a lot for tourism, but they, you know, historically have been working places.
All right, now we're going to move. Oh, why isn't it moving? There it is. And now we're going to go inland a bit from Rob into Plitvice. So Plitvice Lakes is probably Zagreb's Croatia's most famous national park. And you've probably seen pictures of Plitvice. It is absolutely stunning. This is a set of freshwater lake systems that are connected by beautiful waterfalls. There are boardwalks all the way through, and the water just has this amazing color to it. And there's a lot of freshwater fish there. You can hike up to on the cliffs, so you can look down over it, or you can go just stay down on the boardwalks. What else do you want to say?
It has waterfalls falling onto waterfalls falling onto waterfalls because of the way part of the system is terraced as the limestone is eroded over the centuries, over the millennia. And again, this is one of these places where you could spend all day wandering and see a little part of it, and it should be a must stop for anybody visiting the country. The other thing that we wanted to mention, and I mentioned this when we were talking about Dubrovnik, is that Croatia is in some ways been around for centuries, and in modern times is very new. And when we were first driving around, in, again, early 2000s, there's a lot of places in the interior where you can still see the remnants of the war associated with the breakup of Yugoslavia. So these buildings are abandoned, roofs have been bombed off, bullet holes through the side. And so I suppose if you're a history buff and all those sorts of things, it's interesting. But what it did was led to a fundamental change in effectively the living structure in Croatia as people started to flee these small town areas that were being torn up by the conflict and moving into big cities. And that has not really been reversed. And so a lot of the places, in some, you'll see this in some places, are effectively going fallow. Buildings are breaking down, becoming overgrown, those sorts of things. And that's a fundamentally new change that has come about in the last 25 to 30 years.
Oh, sorry. So as you move into the interior and up into Zagreb, you can see some of those areas. And then you get to the big city of Zagreb, which is quite a wonderful European city. All kinds of things to see there, and you'll have an opportunity to go to the main square, the opera house, the market. If you have a chance to go to the old town of Zagreb, it's really fun. Lots of small restaurants and things there, and just fun little streets to go down, lots of places to explore. It is a big city, and that's where the university is. The university is in it's an urban university, so it's spread out. So different parts of the university are in different buildings around the downtown core. But there's a bus system that can get you anywhere you need to be. And it's actually very easy to get around Zagreb. And then there's this amazing big church there, the big cathedral, and a bunch of marketplaces and other things that are really fun to explore.
Yeah, I guess we didn't really mention this, but one of the things that we really like about the marketplaces, and we always took advantage of them when we were there, is that you can go and you can buy your kilogram of fresh cherries for now, I guess now a couple euros. It used to be, they actually just this last year switched their currency from the kuna to the euro, but fresh markets where you can buy your snacks for the day, all sorts of fresh produce, fresh fruits, homemade, locally made cheeses, fresh bread, just a really great way to eat your way around the country. And you find those markets in most places, but especially in the cities.
So we thought Dylan could tell you about a few of our favorite things, and certainly one of his favorite things when he was waiting for us while we were teaching class and so on was catching fish off the seawalls. But go ahead, Dylan.
Hi, yeah. So, like Selina mentioned, while they were teaching the classes, I would run off with my friend Mattia, and we would have ourselves a dip net and catch what fish and things that we could off of the extensive seawall that's in Rovinja. And every now and then we get to catch a cuttlefish, which you can see in the bottom left there. I would say the majority of tourism in Croatia is centered around seeing the history and anthropological tourism, but there of course are also lots of neat critters to see. I'll do my best to remember some of the Croatian names for these. So if you're walking around the city at night, you may see a yesh, which is a hedgehog. That's in the top left there. Every now and then we would see a little bundle of spikes wandering around the streets. And then that center top animal there is the kuna. So that's what the old Croatian currency, that was what it was called. It was named after this animal. Of course, they've now switched to the euro, as my dad mentioned. On the top right there, we have a griffin vulture. The griffin vulture is an endangered species on the coast of Croatia. They've had many different anthropological impacts from poisoning to habitat destruction, things like that. But they are a gorgeous bird, and you might get the chance to see they nest up on the cliffs along the water, and so it's possible you'll get the chance to see them from the boat. Mentioned the cuttlefish for it's kind of a funny story related to that. My very first trip to Croatia, we were walking along the waterfront one night, and my mom bet me $20 that I couldn't catch a cuttlefish. And within, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, I had caught myself a cuttlefish and won myself $20. So
I paid up,
she did, it's true.
and cuttlefish are called sipa.
That's right. And then sea turtles, there's a number of sea turtles as well in Croatia. Occasionally, I do have a memory of us rescuing a couple sea turtles and sending them to some sea turtle rehabilitation centers that had, I don't know, cold shock or something, if I remember correctly. And then probably the best Croatian name for any animal is for the one in the bottom right, which is kokotic. And it's this little fish that has modified pelvic fins that act as sort of little walking feet, and it sort of drags itself along the sand. And my friend Mati and I, when we first learned the name of this fish, spent 5 or 10 minutes just laughing, rolling on the floor because we thought it was so funny. And of course, the Croatians are very fond of their food as well. They're very proud of it. They make excellent pizza. They will more than likely tell you that their pizza is better than the Italians, which may or may not be true. You can figure that out for yourselves. And then given that they have such a long coastline and have been cooking seafood for so long, they also do have excellent seafood. Anything from squid to cuttlefish to crustaceans to fish, all sorts of clams, all sorts of different seafoods. They're very excellent. And then probably my favorite Croatian dish as far as dinner is concerned is cevapcici, which is this sausage that you see here. It's delicious, and you can get it in a number of different dishes. This looks like it's in some sort of flatbread, but it's basically a sausage that's seasoned in a particular way and is very good. And then the Croatians are also very fond of sladoled, which is their ice cream, and they eat it basically every day, as far as I can tell. I think my record for sladoleds in a day was something like 6, and that was when I was young and cute and people kept buying me ice cream. That didn't happen towards the later trips, but that's okay.
And then, of course, you didn't have a chance to drink a lot while you
I was
were.
not old enough when we were going to experience the booze that were there, so.
But they have good beer, sort of typical lagers and things like that. But their wines are quite excellent. And in fact, you will likely have, if you strike up a conversation with Croatians about their wines, they will tell you the whole story about how when there was a wine blight in California, cuttings from the vines, various vineyards were actually sent over to California from Croatia.
Restocked from Croatia.
And restocked.
And since that time, we've actually had the opportunity to return the favor.
Yes, because we've had, they've had a blight there. And then you will, especially if you end up on a smaller boat somewhere,
or in somebody's
home, at some point you will be offered slivovitz. And slivovitz is
it's their version, it's their brandy.
Yes, it's an experience.
Yeah.
There's good slivovitz and not so good slivovitz.
And the not so good stuff, you really want to be careful about spilling on a wooden table because it'll probably take the varnish right off. But the good stuff, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and usually made with plum or berries or other kinds of fruits.
Yep.
Alrighty, so just to wrap up today, we want to tell you about a couple of spots to the north because we understand that some of you may be looking to do an add-on to the excursion. And this is the area where we've spent most of our time. So Rovine is actually right up in here. And then Pula is another, that was an old Roman settlement actually, and it has a big Colosseum and everything
In
else.
fact, the Colosseum there is the largest Colosseum outside of Rome, and it's actually in much better condition. They still hold concerts there.
Yeah, and it's made out of limestone. Yeah, and then Sves, this island here, and then they don't actually have it marked here,
No.
but there's also Loshin, which is this island just to the south of Sves. So I'll just show you a few pictures. So Loshin is one of my very favorite places on the planet. And we've been a lot of places on the planet. But Veli Loshin in particular is a beautiful little town, absolutely gorgeous. And there's lots of nice Airbnbs and things around there. And places to walk around and get in the water and everything else down there. And then there's Rovine, which is the town where we did our course. And that's a little bit more of a tourist town. Wasn't Ivanka Trump there one year? Ivana Trump was there.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, it's kind of a destination, shall we say,
Yes.
for some of
a
the
polo tournament in town.
Oh, was there?
There was.
Oh, okay. But there's also some cool ruins and other things in Rovine to check out.
Yeah, and just again, to reiterate, all these towns are just so amazing to explore. And they all have their main touristy town squares and things like that. But there's so many side streets that you can just duck off onto and just explore the real parts of the towns. And it's spectacular.
So here's a little bit of information that might be useful to you. So if you are doing an add-on excursion or you're there on your own, there is a ferry service that is run throughout Croatia called Jadranlinija. And those are big, fast ferries. You can do overnights with them. They do have one that goes, a couple of them actually, that go from Italy over to Croatia. And then there's a ferry service between Italy and Slovenia and Croatia. And this is the Venetian lines that we've taken a few times. There's also train and bus service, which is easy to get and readily available. And then driving isn't too bad.
Yeah,
so
it's not train service on the small islands.
not that's
Yeah.
right. So it's
But
the bus service. Yeah. And then driving, do you want to talk about, you did all the driving.
Yeah, driving's not too bad there. Some of the highways can be convoluted. They've really invested in the last 25 or 30 years in reconstructing a lot of their long distance freeways so that they can get you places pretty quickly. A lot of the smaller towns, they can be really windy, and that's one of the reasons why they don't allow cars into the downtown core of some of these places.
Right.
But generally speaking, I've certainly been in places where the drivers are a lot crazier than in Croatia. I think it's easily, if you have any confidence at all in your driving skills, it's an easy enough place to get around.
And just a few other things. The currency is now the euro, not the kuna. We have a bunch of kuna. What are we going to do with it? Well, okay. ATMs are easy to find. The Zagreb airport is easy to navigate and straightforward. Football, soccer, and handball, basketball, and water polo are the main
They're
sports.
crazy about those.
Yes.
Yeah, we had to actually, one of the years that we were in Rovine, Croatia was in the final for the European Cup, and the downtown square in Rovine was packed with thousands of people outdoors to watch the game.
And of course, they've done very well in World Cup
Yeah.
of late too. Everything is better in Croatia. So the pizza, the wine, the cheese, everything's better in Croatia. And you will often hear that it was invented in Croatia if you talk to the locals. Croatians are very friendly. Most who work in the coastal towns speak 4 or 5 languages because they're used to a lot of German tourists, Hungarian
Italian,
tourists,
Austrian.
even Russian tourists in many cases. So yeah, the coastal towns are a big tourism draw for all over Europe. And sometimes places do get pretty crowded, including Dubrovnik, I would say.
Yeah, particularly on broad European holidays, that people will come from those more northern countries and from Italy, and they can be really crowded, and particularly during the summer, peak season in the summer.
Right. So, and just keep in mind that in general, in these towns, there's an old town, and then there's the more built up, places where typical normal people live, right? And generally speaking, in the old towns, vehicles are not allowed, so they make you park outside and then you walk in. And a lot of times those towns have cobblestone streets, and those can be really slippery and
So
uneven.
you do need to be careful.
So be careful if you're a little bit challenged with doing a lot of walking on slippery surfaces. You want to make sure you have good shoes. And that you are ready to do those walks into the old towns, because if you can stay in the old towns, that's definitely the best. And of course, we are more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. We're biologists, not historians or social scientists, so we know the most about stuff, the animals and fish and whatnot that live there, but we can certainly put you in touch with good resources with more of the historical information and other things that can help you.
In fact, here's my one marine biology fact for Croatia that might be of interest: is as you're working your way north on the coastline, as you pass the island of Millet, it is a national park and is the furthest north coral reef in the entire Mediterranean.
There you go.
So
that's what we've got for you all. Thanks so much for listening. Kate, what comes up next?
Yeah, you're not done yet. You can't get off yet. We do have some questions, and actually one of those is about fishing. They wanted to know if you have gone fishing there.
Actually, Dylan should speak to that. He went fishing with this little dip net all the time.
Yeah.
Actually, I love to fish, but we've never had the opportunity to do it there. We were always seemed like really busy most of the time we were there. But I know in Rovin where we were, they did offer offshore trips even for tuna fishing and things like that. So it is certainly available.
Great. And then another question was, is there a time of year that you've found that you like better in Croatia over another?
May.
Well, we've been there early summer, midsummer, and late summer, and I think May was the best.
Yeah, early summer.
Yeah. Although the water's warmer later.
Warmer later. Yeah. And the coastline, the interior can get quite warm. Yeah. In the mid to late summer, and so all the Croatians in fact flock to the coastlines in the late summer as well. It's beautiful, and it just has the cooling nature of a large body of water.
Yes, we tend to go to that region in the spring or the early fall is when we typically go to. Another question. Oh, Julie remembers finding some really great silver jewelry in Dubrovnik. What do you like to bring home from Croatia?
Do we like to bring home from Croatia? We've found in a couple of places. What's I call it the Croatian name for it? Maybe it's the Italian name, Leteliers. There's great little, just everybody has little mini art studios, and whether that's sort of the fine arts of printmaking or painting and things like that. So we have a few of those scattered around. That sort of stuff's what we're really looking for. But what we really like to do when we're there is to be able to, like I talked about, go to the markets and get what we don't bring home with us, but like to get are the fresh foods and the cheeses and things like that.
But I would say textiles too.
Also
so we have a really nice tablecloth that was all hand embroidered. They have beautiful weavings and textiles in different parts of the country. So you definitely find those in Dubrovnik.
Yeah, I found in both Croatia and Slovenia shoes.
okay.
There are some shoes that you cannot get in the United States that you can only get over there. And if you like a nice, good shoe, good quality shoe,
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And knockoff soccer jerseys, right, Dylan?
Yeah, you knock off soccer jerseys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and in fact, speaking of shoes, we a colleague of ours there at one point in time, and I don't know, maybe it wasn't the most savory of places where he was shopping, but came across a pair of shoes that were Mikey's
Mikey's.
with an M.
Mikey's. Mikey likes it.
Had a little swoosh on it. Yeah.
That's really funny. That's great. Yes, and the food, as you said, when I was over there, the food is amazing, and the desserts are really great. So be careful, because you might take home a few extra pounds as well.
Could
just
be.
because
That's why I have to do all that walking through all the
That's
the
right.
town.
Yeah,
Oh, and a lot of, I remember now on the small islands, there's a lot of beekeeping. And so there's really
Oh,
good
honey,
honey
that's
on the
right.
sides of
Really
the
good.
roads. Yeah, and various, and meads and other things made with
about
honey.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
yeah. So we have, looks like Zechariah was saying that, do you have a favorite birding spot? Those griffin vultures look amazing.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
so
yeah.
what's the river delta that's just north of Dubrovnik? There, it's just north of Dubrovnik and on the other side of the Bosnian border. But it was spectacular for birding and is accessible as an easy day trip out of
I would
Dubrovnik.
say any river delta is going to have good, really, really good birding. The griffin vultures are that we saw are off of stress, and it's a kind of this weird population that nests on the cliffs there,
Yeah.
and they actually have this whole symbiotic relationship with sheep farmers there that has gone on for many, well, probably thousands of years, at
Maybe.
least many centuries. But yeah, there's a lot of different places where you can go, and if you just and there are a lot of birders in Croatia. So if you let people know that that's what you're interested in,
Yeah.
you should have no trouble finding a good nature tour.
Yeah, and those vultures, they're amazingly accessible in Croatia. Like you'll see them nesting maybe 50 to 100 feet up a cliff from a boat. But if you were to go see those in Spain, where they have larger populations, they're nesting at like 6,000 to 8,000 feet elevations up in the mountains.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, so pack your binoculars so you can see some cool birds, definitely.
Yep.
Another one, it's like Curie wanted to hear more about interesting and unique biology in Croatia.
What would be good to talk about there, Dylan?
There's a hermaphroditic fish.
Yeah, talk about that.
There you go.
I don't remember what it's called, but there's a fish that I remember has a blue stomach, and yeah, it has both male and female reproductive organs. I caught one once. That's what I remember.
Yeah. So of course, most of our work has focused in marine and coastal systems. But one of the other interesting things about Croatia and Slovenia as well is they have wild wolf populations, they have wild bear populations. And what's interesting about them, though, is that to some extent because it's a small country, right, state of Oregon sized-ish, that with a lot more people than the state of Oregon, is that they do manage them in interesting ways where, for example, they'll have a park and they will occasionally set up like feeding stations for the bears to keep them from wandering farther afield. So to keep the bears safe and keep people safe, they manage the biology of the animal by occasionally feeding it to keep them
From getting into trouble.
Keep them with smaller home ranges as well.
It was super interesting for us coming from the United States, North America, with huge amounts of land and not so many people, relatively speaking, to think about conservation biology from the perspective of a European country that has been populated for many more, well, not to say that North America hasn't been populated, but in high densities. There have been high densities of humans in Europe way longer than in North America. And so it was super interesting to learn about how they view conservation biology and how they handle things like predators that have conflicts with humans and things like that.
It's a lot more active managed. Like here, we're like, here's Yellowstone, we've got wolves, right? But there we've got these wolves, we need to keep them contained and these other sorts of things. And so, yeah, it's a very different approach, but they're very active and intentional about it as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll mention about that is that with this, these sort of developments that they're doing with the highways and things like that, if I remember correctly, they're also working on building these wildlife bridges over those new highways. So it's a bridge, but it has trees and bushes and soil to allow animals to cross over the highways safely.
Yeah, those bridges are great. We're seeing more and more of those around the world, which are wonderful to see. Great questions. And then, is it appropriate for folks to talk about the war and the breakup of Yugoslavia? I will say that was when I was there, our guides wanted to talk about it, and they wanted to educate us on it and kind of their perspective and what has happened even afterwards. And the
I think that's right.
yeah,
the
conversations continue.
We had those conversations, of course, with our students, and we would have a class where there would be Croatians and Serbian students and things like that, and sometimes they'd talk together about us. And a lot of times for the young people, their whole attitude was, that was our parents' war. We're not like that. And so, and I think they feel compelled in some ways to share that kind of information to let people know how they feel about what has happened in their past.
But at the same time, I think you'll even now you're likely to run into people who were in, cities that were under siege and were getting shelled on a regular basis. And Dubrovnik had huge areas where, roofs were completely burned away and other kinds of things. And so it is definitely recent history. If you're sitting in a Canova and drinking a beer and you have an opportunity to chat with a local about it, I think they'd be happy to tell you about it.
Yeah. And again, like with any of those kind of conversations, it's a little difficult, but I think if you're open, honest, objective, and receptive, people will speak with you.
And I think if anything, they're more like they're interested in what we think about our politics too. So a lot of questions about American politics. Yeah.
Yes, no matter where we go, it always seems to be there's a lot of questions about American politics. But also with the war in Ukraine right now, I mean, you're a little bit of a distance away from it, but still that all these conversations and memories are going to be a little bit more top of mind too.
Well, and I don't know the details at all, but I'm sure the war in Ukraine is having an impact on energy in Croatia and food supply. So that will be something that people will be interested in talking about.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Well, great. See if there's any other questions. We had one that came in a little bit earlier, and that was any advice for someone who's ever traveled overseas before. And I will say, the advice kind of differs too between where you're going and what type of trip you're going on. But definitely, it's taking a lot longer to get your passport. So if you haven't received your passport, or if you need it renewed, a lot of countries say you have to have at least 6 months valid on your passport and then at least 3 blank pages in the back. So if you're nearing that point with your passport and you want to go on a trip sometime soon, renew it now, because it'll take some time to get that done. But otherwise, go ahead.
Oh, I can just tell you from personal experience, only the pages that say visa on the top
Really
count as pages.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of pages at the end of your passport that don't have those words at the top. They don't count as pages. I almost got trapped in South Africa and Zimbabwe because of this.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, so, mistake, lesson learned. And,
Good
and
traveler's tip. And if you travel a lot, you can always order, there's a bigger passport with more pages on it. So if you go out a lot, just spend the extra money and get that one.
You say just one other piece of advice that I would give on that is that it's everybody, if you're going somewhere, right, you probably spent a lot of money to get there, you want to see all the things and all that, and sometimes it's really important to really just stop and look and just appreciate where you are, see what's to be seen, and just sometimes just to watch and see how a city lives and breathes, as opposed to just seeing this tourist attraction, then that tourist attraction, and then that one over there, and so on and so forth, and wearing yourself out by the end of the day.
I mean, we've been really lucky, being able to visit Croatia so many times that it just becomes, it's like a familiar place to us. So it's really comfortable, but we learn something new every time we go.
Yeah, treat it less like a to-do list and really just sit and absorb it and experience it. And that's 100%. Give the location some time and just be in it. And just to talk with folks. I mean, be welcome, be open to have conversations, talk to people in the pub, just be willing to learn and willing to listen, and you'll have a great time. But any other specifics about traveling, I can go into all kinds of nitty-gritty and details later, but that's a whole nother webinar. Well, great. All right, well, it's almost 6:26. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move on and just talk about a couple of these tours that we have coming up. So I'm going to share my screen and do an overview. So our Croatia and the Dalmatian Coast Tour in 2023 sold out in record time. People are still, they're antsy to get out again, but we are doing it again in 2024. So the 2023 information is up on our website right now. The 2024 stuff, I just received yesterday. So these are the dates, August 30th to September 10th. It's a great trip to highlight all of Croatia. So have a look. And if you're really interested on this one, you can email me travel@osualum.com and I can give you some advanced information, but it'll go online soon. Another cruise in 2024, I mention it because it goes a split. It doesn't really concentrate 100% in that area. It starts in Barcelona, Spain, and ends in Venice, but it's another great trip in the region to check out. And if you would like to keep your feet dry and you're headed out this fall, this is not Croatia, it's not the Dalmatian coast, a little bit more south, but folks love Greece. So I just wanted to throw this in. There's still space available on our September departure to Greece. It's a land tour, small group, and it's a lot of fun, super popular tour. And then, and I see we have some more questions coming in. This is perfect. Looks like Scott is typing some answers, so feel free to add some more questions in the Q&A as I go through this. And then the last bit is just where you can find us. You can find us online at fororegonstate.org/travel. And I will say, with the pandemic, a lot of the tour companies have reduced the amount of brochures that they're mailing just to save some costs. So if you're thinking about heading out, the best place to go is on our tour calendar. It's linked up here at the top. So some people receive a lot of brochures, some people only receive a couple, but this is the place to go to see all the tours. If you would like to check out other travel talks, there's a bunch of them online. They're all recorded and they're linked off of our main page as well. And this is contact information on how to get a hold of us. You can find us in a variety of ways: email, phone, Facebook, online. And of course, this is our Facebook page. I will admit, I'm not the best at Facebook, believe it or not. So you will not get 1,000 Facebook messages, but I do post on there occasionally. And I really want it more for the community to talk to each other, not so much me talking to you. So it is there. And I occasionally post information on there, but you'll be able to find others as well. And Selina, Scott, and Dylan, thank you very much. It was a pleasure tonight to talk with all of you, and we all learned so much.
Great, thanks for the
Thank
opportunity.
you. Thanks for the
everybody.
information.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.